Guilty too. I don't know if I go back and look at my records and I don't like a lot of them. You know, I like some of them, but I don't like them all. Put it out, never even thought about it. And one day I was listening to it and it dawned on me it was the exact same melody as helped me make it through the night. Because of her accident and everything she's been going through, we've been thinking a lot about her.
At 68, Vince Gill has finally spilled the tea. And it's exactly what fans have been whispering about for years.
I don't like every song. I don't like every record. I think that's part of the process, is getting better.
Behind the cowboy hat and the smooth country croon, a story was simmering, one that's been hiding in plain sight.
Well, I really don't know where to start other than have a seat, man. This could go on a while.
Now, the silence is broken, and what he just confirmed is bound to make jaws drop, because sometimes the truth is messier than the rumors. So let's get into it. After years of whispers, rumors, and questions everyone tiptoed around, Vince Gill, 68, country music icon and Grammy-winning legend, is finally breaking his silence. What he's revealing now will make fans rethink everything they thought they knew about his career and personal journey. From the very start, it was clear Vince Gill wasn't just a kid strumming a guitar. Music was in his bones, and maybe a little drama, too. Born in Norman, Oklahoma on April 12, 1957, Vince grew up in a household where melodies were as normal as breakfast. His father, an appellate court judge by day and a part-time musician by night, played in local country and bluegrass bands. While other kids were sneaking candy and comics, Vince was sneaking chords and riffs, learning to play by ear and absorbing the kind of musical instincts most of us only dream of.
We struggled. You know, it was a pretty typical father-son relationship, and he was strict and hard and all those things, a whole lot of things that I didn't enjoy.
By the time he picked up a tiny 4-string tenor guitar, it wasn't a hobby, it was an obsession. While other kids played for fun, Vince drilled into every note like a man possessed. By age 10, his parents weren't just impressed, they were making serious investments in a career that hadn't yet happened. They bought him a Gibson ES 335, a guitar meant for professional musicians. That kind of faith and money wasn't typical. Most parents would have laughed off a 10-year-old saying, "I'm going to be a country star." But Vince's parents weren't typical, and their kid wasn't either.
Going through as a kid, but I'm grateful for it. You know, I'm glad there was a line. I knew not to cross it, and if I did, I got my butt kicked.
But here's where it gets spicy. Vince's talent didn't just earn admiration, it sparked jealousy. Local musicians whispered behind his back, warning that this polished young guitarist was too perfect or too smooth. Some even claimed he was stealing gigs from older, more established players. Vince didn't respond with words. He let his guitar do the talking. But those whispers followed him to Nashville, where politics and cliques ruled the industry. Talent alone wouldn't guarantee a smooth path, and Vince quickly learned that success came with its own controversies. And speaking of controversy, Vince has never shied away from saying what others won't. In 2003, while most of Nashville lined up against the Dixie Chicks for criticizing President George W. Bush, Vince quietly defended them. In an industry where towing the line was the safest move, Vince chose integrity over popularity, telling fans and peers that silencing artists for speaking their truth was wrong and dangerous. Many insiders still whisper that this moment may have cost him some radio favors, but it only solidified his reputation as a man who plays by his own rules.
There's political leaders that have said a lot worse things about George Bush, you know, than Natalie did, you know, and
Then there was 2017, when Vince stepped into the Eagles to fill the massive void left by Glenn Frey's death. Some fans called it sacrilege. How dare a country star join a rock institution? Others hailed it as genius. Even Don Henley admitted it was a gamble. "You're the only guy I wanted, the only guy I trusted to do this right." Critics, however, accused him of invading a sacred band, proving that even decades into a career, Vince could still stir heated debate simply by following his own path. And don't think his reputation for controversy stops at politics and band transitions. Vince has openly addressed the uncomfortable truths of racism and exclusivity in country music. After the Morgan Wallen incident, where the artist faced backlash for using a racial slur, Vince didn't mince words. He called out the behavior, highlighting how the industry often protects talent over ethics. And he made it clear that Nashville's image as a conservative, white-only space was out of step with the times. For a genre that prides itself on tradition, Vince was waving the red flag of progress. And predictably, some people hated him for it.
I was obviously really thrilled, It was not, I think they knew that my intentions were not malicious. I wasn't trying to do anything disrespectful or towards them. It just kind of, I'm still learning. I'm trying to figure out everything.
Even his personal life has had quiet sparks of tension. While Vince is publicly devoted to his wife, Amy Grant, insiders have occasionally hinted at creative clashes and the subtle rivalries that exist behind every Grammy-winning duet and collaborative stage performance. He's a consummate professional, but anyone in the industry knows that the road to the top is rarely free of friction, and Vince has never been afraid to speak up when he sees it. Looking back, every milestone in Vince Gill's life, from that first tenor guitar to the moment he held the ES-335, to defending the Dixie Chicks, to joining the Eagles, reveals a man who doesn't just play music. He challenges norms, sparks debate, and navigates controversy with the same calm that defines his guitar playing. He wasn't learning to be someone else. He was learning to be himself. And sometimes that's the most controversial move of all. Because here's the truth. Legends don't just make music. They make headlines. They ruffle feathers. They take the safe path, rarely. And Vince Gill? He's always chosen the path that's true to him, notes and all. For decades, the music world has been quietly buzzing with whispers about Vince Gill and the Eagles. It wasn't the kind of story that made the front page or dominated headlines. No, it thrived in hushed corners of the industry, passed along in whispered hallway conversations at award shows, jam sessions, and Nashville's legendary honky-tonks. Fans speculated online, music journalists scribbled in notebooks, and insiders occasionally hinted at it with a knowing smirk. Yet, despite all this, nothing concrete ever emerged. It was the kind of rumor that kept people talking, long after the conversation had ended, like a song stuck in your head you couldn't quite place.
I think most of us as artists are inspired by our hardest of times.
Most outsiders dismissed it. Just fan fantasy, they said. They're in completely different worlds, country versus rock. It's never going to happen. And honestly, it did sound far-fetched. Vince Gill had built his legacy as the epitome of Nashville tradition, a clean-cut, soulful country singer with a twang in his voice and a guitar in his hands. The Eagles, meanwhile, were synonymous with California rock grandeur. Eagles tours, legendary riffs, and rock star mystique. On the surface, it seemed like two parallel universes unlikely to collide. But for those paying closer attention, something always felt off. Vince's admiration for the Eagles wasn't subtle. Interviews, offhand comments at award shows, his signature guitar licks, they all hinted at a deep connection. Those who knew him personally often remarked on his quiet obsession with their music, the way he'd study harmonies and guitar tones as if preparing for something only he could imagine. And the fans who read between the lines noticed the subtle signs too. Collaborations hinted at but never confirmed, studio sessions that seemed to disappear without explanation, cryptic social media posts from those in his inner circle.
Not talent, but the song means that much to me.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there were the denials. Over the years, whenever the subject came up, Vince, ever the gentleman, kept a polite distance. "We've never done anything together," he'd say with a smile, or "That's just a rumor, folks." But insiders knew better. Those denials only fanned the flames, making the mystery even juicier. Why hide it if there's nothing to hide? Was it a matter of timing, politics, or a strategic silence? The secrecy only added layers to a story fans couldn't let go of. Finally, after years of speculation and whispered curiosity, the truth emerged, and it did so in the most unexpected way. At 68, Vince Gill, the quintessential country gentleman, broke his silence. Not with a press release or a bland interview, but with a confession that left fans simultaneously shocked and vindicated. He confirmed what many had suspected, revealing the full story of his connection to the Eagles, and more importantly, explaining why he kept it under wraps all these years. The revelation was not just a confirmation, it was a peek behind the curtain of an industry secret, a glimpse at the intersections of fame, respect, and unspoken collaborations that fans rarely get to see.
I don't want to say that I didn't care, but I didn't. I just said, here we go. Let's see what happens. And I was gutsy enough to take off and try.
It wasn't a headline-grabbing announcement. There were no flashing lights, no press frenzy, no dramatic social media post. True to Vince Gill's nature, quiet, respectful, and utterly devoted to the craft of music, his confirmation arrived like a soft whisper rather than a shout. But for those paying attention, it wasn't just news. It was the tip of an iceberg, the doorway to a much deeper, more emotional story about loss, loyalty, and survival in the world of rock legends. When Vince officially stepped in with the Eagles in 2017, 2017, following the death of founding member Glenn Frey in 2016, many assumed his role was temporary. "He's just filling in," whispered industry insiders. "It's not permanent." Some fans feared the band might dissolve entirely, their iconic harmonies silenced forever. But Vince didn't make a fuss. No interviews, no fanfare. He simply showed up, took up his guitar, and let the music carry the story. And in that quiet professionalism, there was a subtle message. The music comes first, always. The heartbreak that set the stage for this unexpected chapter begins with January 18th, 2016, the day Glenn Frey passed away. For millions of fans, it was the end of an era. But for the Eagles themselves, it was more than losing a colleague. It was like losing a member of the family. Frey wasn't just another bandmate. He was a founder, the voice behind timeless hits, a prolific songwriter, and the heartbeat of the group's chemistry. His absence left a vacuum so immense that even longtime observers doubted the Eagles could ever recover.
Glenn was a great friend, and in my heart of hearts, I wish I wasn't doing it. That would mean Glenn would still be around, but life is what it is. And
Don Henley, Frey's co-founder and longtime friend, didn't mince words about the grief that threatened to stop the band in its tracks. "I don't see how we could go out and play without the guy who started the band," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of both personal and professional loss. Henley wasn't just mourning the passing of a friend. He was mourning the potential end of a legacy. Every note, every harmony that had defined the Eagles seemed fragile without Frey's guiding presence. And it wasn't just the music, it was the history. The Eagles had survived breakups, bitter reunions, and lineup changes before, but this was different. Frey's fingerprints were on every major hit, from Take It Easy to Lion Eyes to New Kid in Town. His songwriting had shaped the band's defining albums, his vocals had anchored their live performances, and his charisma had held the group together during decades of touring and creative friction. Without him, the stage felt emptier, the songs less vibrant, the magic fragile.
Do what you can do because of what happens, and so those songs deserve to live on as long as they can.
Yet that's where Vince Gill entered the picture. In many ways, his involvement wasn't just about music. It was about filling an emotional gap with respect, humility, and skill. He wasn't replacing Frey. No one could. He was honoring him, keeping the legacy alive, and quietly proving that sometimes stepping into the spotlight isn't about ego. It's about heart. There were no flashing headlines, no desperate scramble to find a replacement for Glenn Frey. The Eagles, true to their understated professionalism, allowed themselves time to grieve. For months, it was unclear if the band would ever perform again. Fans mourned worldwide. Social media became a river of nostalgia, overflowing with tribute videos, heartfelt messages, and memories of concerts past. Radio stations played Eagles classics on endless loops, and musicians across genres paid their respects, acknowledging the loss of a cultural icon. But while the public grieved, the music industry was quietly abuzz. Behind the closed doors of management offices and private studios, something was stirring. The pause was real. It wasn't just the death of a legendary musician, it was the possible end of one of the most influential bands in American history. Yet amidst the uncertainty, whispers began. Could the Eagles survive without Glenn Frey?
I'm sure it was, just excruciating for them to think about moving on without Glenn, and as it should be, and not sure they wanted to do it.
These whispers quickly turned into quiet conversations. Inside the inner circle, including longtime manager Irving Azoff, people began weighing the impossible question: how could the Eagles honor Frey's legacy without letting their music fade into memory? No one wanted a cheap replacement, and no one even considered forcing a comeback for the sake of headlines. It was about something bigger: the songs, the history, the essence of what the Eagles had built. And then slowly, an idea emerged. Not a bold, publicized plan, but a subtle, behind-the-scenes thought. Perhaps there was someone with the right voice, the right heart, and the right reverence for the band to step in. Someone who could respect Frey's shadow while keeping the Eagles alive. That someone, quietly and almost impossibly, turned out to be Vince Gill. The first call that would change everything wasn't dramatic. It wasn't an official press release or a fanfare announcement. It was a quiet, trusted conversation. After Frey's death in 2016, Azoff reached out to Vince Vince's manager, Larry Fitzgerald. These were two industry veterans who had seen it all, who knew how to handle delicate matters with discretion. And one question hung in the air, almost unspoken. Could Vince Gill help the Eagles honor their legacy without betraying it? Few at the time realized just how deep the connection between Vince and Glenn Frey already ran. Years before, after the Eagles' first breakup in 1980, Vince and Frey had shared the same manager. Back then, it seemed like a minor coincidence, just another crossing of paths in the sprawling music world. But in hindsight, it was a critical link, the invisible thread that made Vince stepping onto the Eagles stage years later almost inevitable.
I'm the new guy in. I don't have a vote, so I just do what I'm told, and life goes on pretty peacefully that way. I have no idea how long this will get to go on. I think they enjoy having me in the band.
When the offer finally came to Vince, it hit him like a thunderbolt. He was blindsided. No hints, no prelude, just an invitation to join one of the most legendary rock bands of all time in the wake of an irreplaceable loss. The weight of the moment, the history, and the responsibility was almost suffocating. But Vince, true to form, didn't hesitate. He understood the gravity. This wasn't about fame, publicity, or ego. It was about love, respect, and keeping the music alive. When Vince Gill later looked back on that moment, he admitted it was beyond anything he could have imagined. This wasn't something you daydream about backstage in Nashville. It wasn't even in his wildest, most far-fetched hopes. Growing up, Vince had been like millions of others, captivated by the Eagles' harmonies, their songwriting, the effortless cool of their California rock meets Americana style. But being asked to join them, that was something else entirely. It felt unreal, like a private fantasy being handed to him on a silver platter. And yet, when the offer finally came, Vince didn't hesitate for a single second. No questions about logistics, no requests to review tour dates or set lists. His answer was immediate, almost instinctive. When do we leave? That simple, bold response said it all. He wasn't thinking about career moves, accolades, or publicity. He was thinking about the honor, the weight of being trusted with a legacy so sacred it could make or break the band's next chapter.
Well, it's pretty surreal.
Yeah.
I couldn't be more grateful that they thought of me to come and do that.
Vince wasn't picked simply for his world-class voice or legendary guitar skills. Those were givens. He was chosen for his character. In the music world, Vince Gill is known as someone who listens more than he talks, respects tradition, and never lets ego dictate his decisions. In a situation so delicate, filling a void left by an irreplaceable founding member, those qualities weren't just important, they were essential. This wasn't about replacing Glenn Frey. That would have been impossible. It was about carrying forward the music, the history, and the soul of the Eagles, and Vince was the perfect person to do it. One of the key relationships Vince had to navigate was with Don Henley. As a co-founder, Henley's influence over the band's decisions after Frey's passing was enormous. Outsiders often wondered how Vince ended up being the one to join the Eagles, but for those familiar with Henley and Vince, it made perfect sense. Their mutual respect had roots stretching back years. In 2015, Henley released his solo album, Cass County, and Vince was one of the featured artists. They collaborated on multiple tracks, blending their voices with ease and discovering a natural synergy in both style and temperament. That studio experience allowed Henley to witness firsthand how Vince operated: calm, focused, professional, and completely dedicated to the music. There was no ego, no showboating, just someone who cared about the craft and the people around him.
Tell me about playing in the big dome.
It's the most people I've ever been ignored by when I'm playing. You're playing and they're looking at all the stuff on the ceiling. They're not paying any attention to you.
So when the time came to find someone to help the Eagles move forward, Henley didn't have to look far. Vince had already proven he had the humility, discipline, and respect necessary to honor the band's legacy. Critics and fans initially questioned the decision. Why bring a country star into a rock institution? They asked, eyebrows raised. Henley's response was simple and pointed. Because he knows how to be in a band. That one sentence said it all. It wasn't about fame, genre, or headline value. It was about teamwork, attitude, and reverence for the group dynamic. Vince wasn't stepping in to become the next Glenn Frey. He wasn't looking for the spotlight. As he confirmed in interviews, "I don't have to have the spotlight." Those words, coming from an artist of his stature, were rare and precisely what made him the ideal fit. He came to support, to enhance, and to honor. Not to overshadow, but to stand alongside.
Music to me has never been visual. And the whole point of that show and that building is the visual side of it.
That partnership brought stability to a group still reeling from one of the most emotional blows in rock history. And as fans would soon see, that careful blend of respect, humility, and sheer musical talent made all the difference, not just on stage, but in preserving the legacy of the Eagles for a new generation. July 2017, Dodger Stadium, Los Angeles. The Eagles were about to step onto the stage for their first performance since Glenn Frey's passing, and no one knew exactly what to expect. This wasn't just another tour stop. This was a defining moment, a night heavy with emotion, history, and the unspoken weight of a legacy hanging in the balance. For Vince Gill and Deacon Frey, Glenn's 24-year-old son, it was their first time performing with the band. For both, the evening was historic, emotional, and utterly transformative. The concert was part of the Classic West Festival, a star-studded two-day event featuring legends like Fleetwood Mac, Steely Dan, and the Doobie Brothers. Yet the most anticipated performance wasn't by any of those headliners. It was the Eagles' return.
Want me to stay as long as they want to do it, so I think until they hang it up, I'll probably be around.
Fans and critics alike wondered, could the Eagles really continue without Glenn Frey? Could they carry on the magic, the signature sound, without the man who had been the band's voice, heart, and anchor for decades? From the moment the first note rang out, it was clear this would not be a typical concert. It wasn't just a performance. It was a tribute, a reckoning, and a carefully orchestrated moment of remembrance. Bringing Deacon Frey into the fold was a decision charged with emotion. At 24, he stepped into the role his father had embodied for decades, bearing both a striking physical resemblance and a voice that carried echoes of Glenn's warmth and tone. But it wasn't imitation. It was reverence. Deacon moved with quiet strength, understanding intuitively that his role wasn't to replace, but to honor. Every note he sang, every line he delivered was a connection between past and present, father and son, memory and continuation. And then there was Vince Gill. Not a Frey by blood, but family in spirit. He brought decades of experience, professionalism, and a deep love for the music. On stage, Vince didn't dominate or steal the spotlight. He complemented it. He sang lead vocals on Lion Eyes and New Kid in Town, each phrase delivered with care, precision, and palpable emotion. Every guitar lick was deliberate, respectful, a musical nod to Glenn's legacy rather than a replacement.
I do love old guitars.
You can see the aging on the wood. It's beautiful.
Yeah, this was made in 1942 and it's still
Wow.
in pretty condition.
The synergy between Vince and Deacon was almost uncanny. Deacon embodied the past, the personal connection to Glenn, while Vince provided the steady foundation of experience and musicianship. Together, they created a rare, delicate balance, honoring what had been lost while shaping a path forward. The performance was more than a concert. It was a statement the Eagles could mourn, reflect, and yet still soar. That night at Dodger Stadium wasn't just about music, it was about legacy, resilience, and emotional honesty. Fans described it as a reckoning, a moment to confront grief while celebrating life and artistry. Vince and Deacon helped the band reclaim its footing, showing the world that the Eagles could move forward without erasing the past. By the final chord, it was undeniable. Glenn Frey couldn't be replaced. And that wasn't the point. The point was continuity, respect, and the enduring power of music. Sparks flew, hearts swelled, and a legacy that could have ended in silence instead roared back to life, proving that even after loss, the music and the memory would endure. The love story between Vince Gill and Amy Grant is one of those tales that feels destined yet scandalous, the kind of narrative tabloids dream about. But in truth, it's as much about patience, respect, and emotional honesty as it is about passion. Their journey didn't begin with fireworks. It began with a spark, subtle but undeniable, slowly growing into something that would test their patience, their faith, and their very reputations.
I remember one time, I really remember this because I wrote it down, but I was like, I feel like you understand me. I feel like you, when I'm thinking something, you know how to finish my thoughts. I feel like you totally get me. And he said,
They first crossed paths in 1993, brought together for a Christmas TV special. Vince, already a country music heavyweight, and Amy, the Christian pop icon with a devout following, were both at the top of their games. But what happened behind the scenes was anything but ordinary. During rehearsal, Vince said something small, almost casual. Unknit that brow, a minor comment to most. But to Amy, it was transformative. She later confessed that no one had ever spoken to her that way before. Kind, disarming, unexpectedly intimate. In that brief moment, something shifted. An unspoken recognition of chemistry and compatibility that neither could ignore.
I heard her singing on the radio, and I think I was driving down on 8th Avenue, and I just pulled the car over and I said, that voice is so interesting. I never had met Amy, and I'd heard all these just wonderful, wonderful things.
On set, their connection was unmistakable. Laughter came easily, conversations flowed effortlessly, and a warmth lingered between them that went beyond mere professionalism. Yet the situation was delicate. Vince was married to Janice Oliver and Amy to fellow Christian singer Gary Chapman. Both had commitments they took seriously, particularly Amy, whose life and career were anchored in faith, family, and public image. Despite the spark, boundaries were respected. For years, they did nothing beyond quiet friendship and occasional collaborations. But those years were far from simple. Behind closed doors, both faced personal struggles, emotional isolation, and marriages that weren't fulfilling. It was a period Amy would later call those long years. Years of silent longing, ethical wrestling, and restrained desire. Publicly, everything appeared normal. Privately, hearts were quietly tethered to a future that seemed impossible at the time.
When you finally meet her, it's a given that, people are taken when they meet her. She's got that kind of spirit about her that is real captivating.
When their romantic connection finally surfaced, the public reaction was immediate and intense. Rumors swirled, judgment flew fast and furious. Many assumed the worst, that Vince and Amy had acted on their feelings before their divorces. But the truth, confirmed repeatedly by both, was different. Their relationship only began after their respective divorces. Vince's in 1997, Amy's in 1999. Even so, the scrutiny was harsh. Fans debated motives, morality, and timing, making their eventual romance feel like a public trial. Once free, they didn't wait long to embrace love. Just 4 months after Amy's divorce, they went public. Some fans were shocked, others skeptical, but those closest to them recognized something rare: honesty. This wasn't a fling or a calculated career move. It was a genuine connection, years in the making, rooted in patience, shared experience, and mutual respect. Their wedding in March 2000 reflected that maturity. Far from a flashy celebrity spectacle, it was quiet, intimate, and deeply personal. Set on a Nashville hillside, surrounded by children from previous marriages, the ceremony wasn't about reinvention. It was about blending lives, honoring journeys, and forging a partnership grounded in love and understanding. Over time, public perception softened. The narrative shifted from scandal to admiration. People realized that Vince and Amy's story wasn't about impulsive passion. It was about perseverance, integrity, and timing. They endured heartbreak, waited for the right moment, and ultimately built a life together based on honesty and respect.
I just remember the smile. That's all I can remember. And truth be told, we invited Amy because it was a Christmas show and we knew that she had a pretty big following in that world.
Today, Vince Gill and Amy Grant are celebrated not only for their music, but for the way they navigate life's complexities with humility and heart. Their story is a reminder that love isn't always simple or immediate, but when it's real, it's worth waiting for, enduring public scrutiny and honoring with patience and care. Over the years, Vince Gill and Amy Grant have shown the world that their love isn't just about music, faith, or family. It's about holding steady through life's real challenges. And few tests were as profound as the serious health issues Amy faced between 2020 and 2023. Through it all, Vince never left her side. Even when he couldn't be physically near, his presence was constant, his love unwavering. In 2020, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Amy went in for what she thought was a routine checkup. She had no symptoms, no pain, no signs that anything was wrong. But by chance, doctors discovered a rare heart condition called partial anomalous pulmonary venous return, a defect that causes some blood to return to the wrong side of the heart. Many people live with it unknowingly, but in Amy's case, it required open heart surgery. The decision was daunting, especially under strict pandemic hospital restrictions. Only one person could accompany her. Vince was heartbroken that he couldn't be with her every moment, yet he stayed close in every way he could, checking in constantly, praying, and making sure Amy felt his unwavering support. He told her simply, "I love you one day at a time." That phrase became a lifeline, a reminder that they were navigating this challenge together, even when apart.
But it was a staggering smile that stopped me. I'd never seen a smile quite like that.
Amy's surgery was successful and her recovery was steady. But in 2022, another crisis struck. While biking in Nashville, she hit a pothole, fell hard, and suffered a traumatic brain injury. Knocked unconscious and rushed to the hospital, she faced a grueling recovery. This time, Vince was able to be by her side immediately, canceling 3 concerts to focus entirely on her care. The injury left Amy with memory loss, dizziness, and difficulty processing information. Healing was slow and unpredictable, some days better than others. Vince stayed with her through it all, grounding her, giving her space, and taking on extra responsibilities at home. Even after the brain injury, challenges continued. Amy later needed throat surgery to repair vocal cord damage. Through every trial, Vince's steady love never wavered. His commitment, patience, and care became the anchor that kept Amy and their family strong. Then came shoulder surgery for an unrelated injury. It felt like one challenge after another, but Vince never wavered. No matter what came, he remained her rock, gentle, patient, and steady. Those close to them said Vince never made Amy feel like a burden. He never rushed her to recover or return to the stage. Instead, he ensured she felt supported and safe, both physically and emotionally. Amy has often said that Vince's calm, reassuring presence helped her get through some of the scariest moments of her life. Their story during these years isn't just about surviving health crises. It's about a deep, enduring love that shows up in the hardest times. It's about patience, faith, and showing up day after day, even when the future is uncertain.
And we tried to be so respectful. I mean, life is full of all kinds of mysteries. And I'm not saying any of us did it all wrong or all right.
For Vince and Amy, these years weren't just a test. They were proof that their love was stronger than anything life could throw at them. At 68, Vince Gill isn't chasing chart-topping singles or radio hits. He's not aiming for award shows or headline tours. Instead, his focus is deeper, writing songs that tell the truth. For Vince, this stage of his career isn't about success as the world defines it. It's about meaning, honesty, and a lifelong connection to music that still runs just as strong. In recent interviews, Vince has said, "I'm writing the best songs of my life." That's a bold statement from someone who's already recorded dozens of hits, won 22 Grammy Awards, and been inducted into both the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Grand Ole Opry. But he says it with quiet confidence, not pride. These days, Vince writes without pressure, and that freedom allows his music to flow more naturally than ever. In his younger years, ambition, deadlines, and a fast-moving industry defined him. Now his focus has shifted. He no longer writes to impress or compete. He doesn't chase trends or try to match a sound. Instead, he writes songs that reflect life itself, all its joy, loss, questions, and quiet beauty. "I don't tell people what to feel," he says. "I'll just tell you what I've seen." This move from ambition to authenticity has opened a new creative space. Ideas aren't forced, they're allowed to breathe. Sometimes songs come quickly, sometimes they take months. Vince has learned that songwriting isn't a race. It's a way to understand the world and share something real with others. Despite decades in the spotlight, he hasn't lost his love for collaboration. He continues to work with rising artists, duets with the likes of Kelly Clarkson, mentoring new talent at the Grand Ole Opry, and always lifting others up. Vince never worries about who gets the credit. What matters is chemistry, honesty, and the heart behind the music. He also filters his work through the lens of legacy. Will this song stand the test of time? Does it say something worth remembering? Is it true? If the answer is yes, he moves forward. That standard keeps him grounded, focused not on fame, but on connection, the very essence of why he fell in love with music in the first place. Vince still plays with the same heart as the kid who first picked up a 6-string guitar. He hasn't abandoned who he was, he's just grown deeper into it. Today, he understands more about people, grief, patience, and joy. And all of that wisdom shines through in his music, soft and strong at the same time. That's it for today. See you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.